didn't Zoom much. I just kept on coming to town during the pandemic, so I don't know anything about Zoom. I think it's my third Zoom meeting. And then the presentation is just what was shown to council some time back. Okay, we're good? Yeah. Okay, we're good. So hopefully everybody can hear me online. Okay, so this is Chad Schutz. I don't know can they see us or are they just hearing us? Anyway, so again, my name is Chad Schutz. We have Michael Poff here. He is the engineer from Coastal Engineering Consultants. Like I was saying before, if you can just be patient with me in moderating, I don't have a lot of experience doing it, but I will do my best with people that are online. Whenever you have a question, we'll just ask you to raise your virtual hand. If you have any trouble with that, just put it in the chat, and we'll try and figure it out. But we'll just try and field one question at a time, and do some questions in the room, and then questions on Zoom, and kind of switch back and forth. We want to try and keep it to a question and answer format, kind of informal, so no real time limits. But we want to try and let Mr. Michael do most of the talking so that we can learn as much as we can. So, and then also with everybody that's in the room, if you can come up to the microphone to talk, just so that people at home can hear what your question is, and also it's we're just recording it for people who couldn't make it today so that they can get some feedback on that. So with that, anybody want to go first? Yep, so just go ahead and stand up. We can have two people kind of in the queue. And I guess I can pass around the microphone as well.
Hello, Mike Waltman from the Privateer on Fort Myers Beach. I'm going to read very quickly, 3 lines from the Fort Myers Beach Dune Management Plan. One line is the plan shall include new dune plantings. Another line, the plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan of Lee County and Fort Myers Beach, which both require dune plantings in association with beach nourishment. The net impact will increase in the number of native salt-tolerant vegetation and dunes. One of the objectives is to conserve and enhance the shoreline of Estero Island by increasing the amount of dunes. Okay. So I've been told by Chad numerous times that vegetation would be limited to 75 or 80%, I'm not sure which one we're going with, of the width of our property and 10 feet from the...
Has this meeting started yet?
Excuse me?
That's my question too. I can't hear anything.
Okay.
I can't either, but the slides haven't changed. Would the person who is sponsoring this meeting please speak up?
So can you hear me now on Zoom? So it sounds like we're having some technical difficulties. But go ahead and carry on and we'll...
Hello?
Yeah, I can't hear anything either.
I would say just go ahead. And,
Nor can I.
Me neither. Me neither.
I initially heard somebody say we're ready to start the meeting. I don't know if that was one of us or the person who's actually driving.
I think that was the court reporter.
Well, give it a little while longer.
So guys, if people on Zoom, just let us know if you can, let us know by the chat if you can hear us now.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Yes, I hear you.
Hear you.
Yes.
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 Want to start over?
No, I don't think it's...
I can hear you.
So, yeah, we can start over.
Okay. You ready? Ready. Okay, again, Mike Waltman, Privateer, Fort Myers Beach. I'm going to read a couple of things from the Fort Myers Beach Dune Management Plan. One of the lines, and I'll just go through the 4 of them again. The plan shall include new dune plantings. The plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan of Lee County and Fort Myers Beach, which both require plantings in association with beach nourishment. The net impact will be an increase in the number and area of native salt-tolerant vegetation in dunes And also, one of the objectives is to conserve and enhance the shoreline of Estero Island by increasing the amount of dunes. Okay. I've been told by Chad that vegetation would be limited to about 75 to 80% of the width of our property. 75%. And between 10 and 15 feet, which one is it?
10 feet.
10 feet from the start of our manicure property, which in the case of the privateer would be the start of our seawall. Is all of that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, the only thing I would add is you do have some flexibility as to, it doesn't necessarily have to start, the vegetation doesn't have to start right at your seawall. It could be moved out a little bit.
It could be moved out, but if we wanted to, we can start it at the seawall and just go 10 feet out.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I've been told that any new dunes that are placed on our beach will be placed within that area. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Again, reading from the Fort Myers Beach Dune Management Plan, the effect of the town's efforts may be a noticeable transition from today's manicured and compacted beach towards a naturally appearing and functioning beach. Okay. Does this mean that there will be more dunes or vegetation outside of the area that I just mentioned?
Only if the property owners wish so. So that's the only requirement, and you can continue to rake as you have been doing.
So
on the
if
open beach.
we do what I just said, 10 feet, 75, that's our requirement. It can be right up against our seawall, and we don't have to go any farther.
Correct.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
This is Diana Teles. I need for everyone to please announce your appearance before you speak for the record. Thank you.
My name is Dennis Greenspan. Can we start from the beginning? I didn't know anything about any beach renourishment until the last several days when I saw the announcement about this meeting. And rather than, can we start from the beginning? What is it all about? What's the impact on the property going to be? What is it that you're asking for?
Sure. So my name is Michael Poff. I'm the president of Coastal Engineering Consultants. We were hired by the town of Fort Myers Beach to put together a restoration renourishment project for the north end of Estero Island. But as we were applying for and negotiating the contract, multiple property owners came to the town and said, we want to be included in the beach management plan, and they were located south of the original project limits. The project was originally renourished on the north end down to south of the pier around Crescent Beach in 2012, 2013. That work was done by Lee County and partnered with the town of Fort Myers Beach and the state of Florida. So we were then tasked with developing a island-wide beach management plan to look at all of the shorelines, and for those that have been designated critically eroding or those that have been eroding, to recommend actions to address the erosion. And so if we can get the presentation to advance, we can show you a couple of slides to summarize the beach plan.
Michael? Michael?
I'm not sure who's talking, but yes, go ahead.
Well, this is Jim Hatterholt from the town council. Michael, what we missed in the beginning is the premise of this particular meeting today. Is it just to provide public input, to give some additional information? Could you just sort of set the table as the purpose of the meeting today? I think that would be helpful for folks.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. The purpose of today is to field questions from the public, the stakeholders, residents, whoever might be in attendance via Zoom or in person, and answer questions related to the beach project. We presented to you, to council recently. It was not really a back and forth Q&A with the resident stakeholders, but there were several questions that were asked during that meeting. And also to introduce the requirement for a construction easement. There's a temporary construction easement that will be mailed out to all of the property owners that have beachfront property and everyone will be requested to have that easement signed. If you're a condominium and you have a representative, an agent, or an entity that can sign on behalf of the condominium, that would be fine. We don't have to have every condominium owner sign it. So like single-family properties or multifamily would sign, condominiums would have their representative sign, any commercial interest would have their representative sign, and we'll explain what that easement is during this Q&A and conversation. And so that's the purpose. Twofold is to answer questions, and number one is to introduce the easement document so that when they get the mailing in the near future, they recognize what this mailing is all about, and we'll try to answer questions today about the easement as well.
That's very helpful in just setting the table for today's meeting. Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome. So Chad, you took my advance, so I can just say next slide?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll just go from there. So what you see in front of you, I guess let me ask, for those on Zoom, can you see the slides?
Yes.
Yes.
Fantastic. Please go back a slide. So this is, of course, a picture of the island and our beach fill plan. There are multiple segments on the island, and I'll talk about what those are. The borrow area is in the ebb shoal of the pass. It's the same borrow area that was used for the original project. It still has over 1 million cubic yards of sand available in it, and so we're just recommending to use that same borrow area. We've defined 2 pipeline corridors. So there'll be a hydraulic dredge that will sit in the borrow area, and it will pump sand through a submerged pipeline to the beach through that north corridor to do the north part and maybe part of the central part of the island. And then a pipeline will go through the south corridor and also probably up north into the central part of the beach as well. The pipeline length is related to the hydraulic equipment and the boosters that they bring. So we don't know the exact point at which they will flip the pipe, but we anticipate the contractor will use both corridors to build the project. So they'll come to the beach, they'll do the north and south segments, and they'll work towards the center till it's no longer hydraulically efficient, and then they'll move the pipe to the corridor and work the other direction. We typically don't dictate sequence to the contractor, we let that up to them, but there's also environmental windows that could affect, for example, on the south side of the island, we have the critical wildlife area. It's a huge nesting area for shorebirds, and there are windows where we can't work during shorebird nesting season, so that may affect the sequence of the work in terms of the south end. Next slide. So the north segment is from the terminal groin, as I said, down to about Crescent Beach. That's the original limits of the 2012-2013 project. Then, for lack of a better anything exciting to name these segments, I just called it the central segment. And then there's a non-critically designated segment. So the area that's been accretional in the center of the island. So we have this big wide area that's been accreting over years, and it is not receiving a designation of critically eroding from the state of Florida, which means it's not eligible for state funding. If it's not eligible for state funding, it's not eligible for Lee County TDC funding either. South of there, when you start to get around like Leonardo Arms, that area where it's eroding again, that is designated critically eroding. And then as you come around the very, very tip of the island, there's another area that's not designated at this time, and that's also been an accreting beach.
Can you go back to the map and show us where the non-critical areas are?
Actually, I have some zoomed in photos. It'll show up much better. Next slide. So I'm going to go through one at a time. So here's the north segment, and the upper panel is the plan view, of course, and then the lower panel is what we call a beach profile cross-section. The vertical axis are elevations, and the horizontal are distance from the land side heading into the Gulf. And so on the north side, we have a pretty healthy dune in this particular profile at R177, and the permitted fill template, which was the one that was constructed, is shown as a black dashed line. And what we're recommending is a slight adjustment and also raising the elevation. So that original design was done in the early 2000s by the Corps of Engineers. And we're recommending, to account for sea level change, to raise the elevation of the beach to provide additional storm damage reduction benefits. Next slide. So here's our central segment. Again, showing the plan view and the typical cross-section. This is the area where the Corps of Engineers places the beneficial use material when they dredge the inlet. So this area has had the benefit of about every 4 to 6 years of that sand being placed. Now it is placed in the near shore, which means it's placed below the water line. They do that for a number of reasons. They can work during nesting season, and because sometimes there's silt pockets and they don't want that silt up on the beach, so they lay it into the near shore. But that beach has benefited by the accretion, the natural accretion that occurs when the Corps of Engineers places that sand. Next slide. So this area is a couple of different things going on this part of the beach. So the erosion control line is the line established prior to construction of a beach project. It's required by state statute. And so the Estero Island erosion control line starts at the north end at the terminal groin and goes down to monument R198, which is around Lanark. And that's where it ends. So if we do any sand placement below the mean high water line, in the future, south of Lanark, we will have to establish an erosion control line. In this particular area of the beach, this is that naturally wide, I don't know, maybe not naturally, but this area has experienced accretion in recent years, or has been stable, but it's low-lying. It has a pond that forms during the summertime due to all the rains, and we have standing water. Next slide. So here's some pictures that Chad had taken last summer. And so to address this area, we're recommending that we raise the elevation of the beach by adding sand during the project. If the contractor is mobilized, he's already pumping sand, the most economical way to address these ponding areas is to elevate the beach with sand that we come from the bar area.
Is this state-funded or municipal-funded sand that's being pumped in?
So the question is this state-funded or locally funded? So in this particular area, from R200 to R203, so this 3,000-foot section on the beach is not currently designated a critically eroding beach by the state of Florida. Therefore, it will not receive any state funding, nor will it receive any Lee County funding. On behalf of the town, we have requested that the state of Florida designate this area as a critically eroding segment. There are ways in the statutes of the state of Florida to designate a beach that's either accretional or stable as critically eroding for environmental reasons. For example, sea turtle nests that are nesting and placing nests in this area could get inundated during these storm events in the standing water. So there's a benefit for sea turtle nesting to improve the hatching success. There's also something called continuity of management. If you have a beach to the north and a beach to the south that are critically eroding, and you want to address a beach management plan on an island-wide basis, they are allowed to designate it critically eroding. If the state of Florida designates from R200 to R203 as a designated critically eroding beach, it will then be eligible to receive state funding and Lee County funding.
Once the renourishment occurs, per several Florida lawsuits, the state... Dave Nussbaum, Island Winds. Once the sand hits the beach that's paid for either by the state, county, or municipality, per several Florida lawsuits, the privately owned property then becomes a trust of the state of Florida and not privately owned. Would you like to comment on that?
Sure. In this particular area, from R200 to R203, we are only recommending that sand be placed above the mean high water line, which is on private property. There will be no erosion control line set for this segment because all the sand is being proposed to be placed above mean high water So it will remain private property.
So you're saying that there is no chance that the privately held beach, once it receives sand, will become a trust of the state, and it will remain private property?
On this particular segment, that's what I'm saying, yes.
Okay. Is there someone that can offer a legal opinion on that?
Hi, can you please state your name for the record? Thank you.
Can you restate your name?
Dave Nussbaum, Island Winds.
Thank you. I am not an attorney. I'm giving you information that's been given to me by the state of Florida. So I would recommend that that question be deferred to someone with that legal background, or you could contact Guy Weeks with the state of Florida. He is the representative for this region that deals with the erosion control line. His name is Guy Weeks, and his information will be available online, or we can certainly get it to you to email him or call him, and you could hear straight from the official at the state of Florida.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I may, can I just read an email from Mr. Weeks that he wrote on this issue?
Sure, Chad.
So Chad, see statements below. The department is charged pursuant to sections 161.101 and 161.161 Florida statutes to identify those beaches of the state which are critically eroded and maintain a comprehensive long-term management plan for their restoration. The critically eroded beaches report is updated on an annual basis by the department. Designating a beach as critically eroded can be due to erosion, or in rare cases, the designation is for a gap segment of beach between two eroded project areas. And the gap segment is designated as critically eroded for quote-unquote continuity of management. See critically eroded beach definition on page of the report, referring to the critically eroded beaches report. By designating a segment of beach as critically eroded does not automatically mean a project's local sponsor will provide a satisfactory feasibility study or design template for a DEP permitted project. There is a rigorous review process to determine if the proposed project is an acceptable design with an acceptable strategy for restoring the beach segment. Also, if a beach being designated as critically eroded does not mean a project, also, if a beach being designated as critically eroded does not mean a project will automatically have an erosion control line. If the project area places sand above the mean high water line and does not advance the mean high water line seaward or have offshore impacts, then an ECL, erosion control line, is not required. Also, if sandy material for the project is considered bypass material from an inlet pass channel navigation project and is placed on the beach, such as we had in the CWA a few years back, an ECL is not required or is exempt from this type of inlet bypassing project. The only real effect a critically eroded beaches designation by the department has is it makes the area of beach eligible for state funding for a local government to pursue state funding for a proposed beach project through the local government funding request process within the department's Beach Funding Assistant Program. So again, the only real effect a critically eroded beaches designation by the department has is that it makes this area of beach eligible for state funding.
Okay. I have one more question if I can, then I'll be done with our section. On the April 7th staff meeting, this is Dave Nussbaum, Island Winds. In the April 7th meeting, staff recommended designation of R200 to R203 as critically eroded based on 5 separate criteria. These were: 1, solves the ponding issue; 2, expands sea turtle nesting habitat; 3, enables the town to maintain a positive slope to drain the beach for the life of the permit; 4, categorizes a beach as an engineered beach, which then qualifies the shoreline for FEMA funding should a hurricane wash the beach away; and 5, satisfies one of the state and TDC's requirements for cost share funding. Rule 62 B-36.005 parenthesis 5 FAC allows critically eroded shorelines to include peripheral segments or gaps identified between critically eroded areas that may be stable or slightly accretional, such as R200 to R203, but requires that their designation as a critically eroded shoreline is necessary for the continuity of management or for the design integrity of adjacent beach management projects. My question is, how do these 5 items listed by staff satisfy the conditions for inclusion as a critically eroded beach based on code language?
So not all of those are required to have it listed as a critically eroding beach. The fact that we're addressing the ponding issue is a technical statement. The fact that we're improving sea turtle nesting habitat is also a technical statement. The critical eroding beach designation does allow for environmental enhancement, and it allows for that continuity of management. So those are the criteria that we're trying to satisfy with this section to have the state deem it critically eroding.
So do we have anybody on Zoom that would like to ask a question?
Yes, this is Gabriella Miyamoto from Gateway Villas. I've gotten lost, to be honest here. So if we could go back to the first slide or two, and can you just in very, very simple terms pinpoint which stretches are going to get activity and which stretches aren't, which stretches are actually going to see sand pumped onto them and which stretches aren't? This R200, 300 thing is completely confusing to me. So going down the beach, starting at the north, where will work be done? Where will it not be done?
So the permitted area will be from Bowditch down to Lanark. Are you familiar with Lanark Street or Lanark Avenue?
No, not exactly. Is it near the pier or?
No, Lanark is closer to the Catholic Church thereabouts.
Okay, all right.
Right where you get that curve.
Got it.
So
that's
that's the one big area, and then there's another area that's the open beach, where we were just speaking with Mr. Nussbaum on that open beach, which used to be called Holiday Inn Beach, or where Wyndham and between Wyndham and Outrigger approximately.
Okay.
And then the third segment, the south segment, would be from, our fourth segment would be in the CWA from Cresciente to Sun Caper.
Okay, thank you. Then the second thing is so as part of this beach renourishment, you're going to be requiring properties to put in the dunes and the vegetation, what do you call them, bulwarks or blockages? Is that right?
Yeah. So if a property does not have any vegetation, or the vegetation isn't quite 75% of the width of the property, then yes, there would be a on-grade dune planting to create a 75% of the width of the property, a vegetated area that we call a managed beach zone, which is what
so that is automatically part of the easement then,
yes,
permit or
yes,
whatever. If the owners grant you an easement to renourish the beach, that automatically comes with it.
Yes, ma'am.
So here's the thing at Gateway Villas. We are on the north end of the island, obviously, and we participated in the renourishment, and we did the vegetation across, I think, it seems at least 75% of the width, and it's been a problem. And because what has happened is, in rainy season, the area on the side between that vegetation and the building floods, and that has caused a lot of unhappiness. So I don't know if that is supposed to be what that vegetation does or not, but obviously there's not a lot of interest at Gateway Villas to see more vegetation and more flooding.
So, in my mind, there's two things I would say. Number one is if you already are vegetated, then you wouldn't be required to do more vegetation. And the second thing is I'd like to work with y'all to, if you'd like to reconfigure your dune, maybe we can figure something out to get a configuration that that alleviates that flooding issue.
Okay. And I'm sorry, if we want to pursue that, I mean, as I said, we already vegetated. I don't know whether we're at 75% or not. Obviously, if we're slightly less, we're really not thrilled about going more. But who do we contact to talk about solving this flooding issue?
So you can contact me, Chad Schutz. My email is chadd@fmbgov.com. So Chad with 2 D's at fmbgov.com.
Chad, CHADD at FMB.
GOV. Yep. FMB as in Fort Myers Beach, GOV as in government.
Good.
.com.
Okay.
This is Michael. I just brought your property up. I'm looking at a Google Earth image on my phone. You have a huge section of dune plantings that appears to go along the north property line, and it's perpendicular to your property. So it's basically pointing straight towards the Gulf. Then you have a very small, maybe 10-foot wide or so dune planting area that is parallel to the shoreline that sits well out onto the beach. Are you talking about the area between the...
I'm not sure where you see a perpendicular. I mean, I thought we were entirely parallel, but this is 500 Estero Boulevard. I don't know. I mean, I don't... All I am aware of is a stretch that's parallel to the beach and the building. And that, in between that, there's flooding in rainy season. So I'll have to... I don't know where the perpendicular part is.
I don't believe that small area of planting was causing your flooding. It's probably the elevations of the beach in that area. So we can look at that. We may need to add sand landward of the plantings to address the ponding.
Okay. Okay.
That perpendicular piece, Vicky Dutcher, Kona Beach Club, is between Gateway and Kona, and it's really mostly your property.
Okay.
Our problem is similar, except that it's not our beach does flood. Yes. Our beach does flood. We have, a big ocean of water behind the dune, between the building and the dune. But even worse, we have a parking lot that we all have to wear boots in the summer to walk through because we have water that deep. And the city doesn't want you to push it toward the ocean, and they don't want you to push it toward the street. So basically, we live in a swimming pool in the summer, and everybody has to walk around with boots. And this is all part of this dune easement thing. I mean, we definitely don't want any more dune. We can't see the sunset from the pool anymore. We've got a dune that's, almost 8 feet tall to the other side of our property, opposite of the perpendicular piece between Gateway and us. And then on the other side is one, and that has become gigantic. It's very, very tall, and we'd like to frankly reconfigure some of those things at Kona. But our problem is that we are underwater in the summer, and the water recedes, flows down, goes away in the sand long before we have a clear parking lot. So, we would like to know if we're going to have to put any more plantings in. They told us what plantings we would have to put in, or what they would put in when we signed the easement initially. I think that was 2012. And they lied. They did not put those plants in. They put in totally different plants than what was agreed to. And they also told us that the dunes would not really be very high at all. It would be, a foot, foot and a half maybe off of, the level. They're huge. They, they're like side walls with a lot of grasses and stuff. Fine, we have snakes and stuff that live in there, which we love those guys. But it's too massive as far as we're concerned. And when they talk about the where the sand, the beach used to be, as the mark of, what do you call it?
There's an erosion control line, and there's a mean high water line, there's the
Yeah.
beach berm, and there's lots of different terms used.
In 1979 or 1976, I could sit at my pool and talk to people who were walking on the beach. That's how close the beach used to be, or the shoreline used to be to us. Now we've extended it so far. It's wonderful, it's lovely, except for the fact that we live in a swimming pool in the summer. So that's a problem. Thank you.
A lot of questions, comments, and things. We're not going to resolve your parking lot flooding issue with the beach project. That's, the beach is not causing the flooding in your parking lot. Is impervious surface is what's holding that water. You're right, we cannot direct stormwater onto the beach. That's not allowed by state statute or local or county requirements. So you cannot discharge directly onto the beach. But your stormwater ponding problem in your parking lot will have to be addressed in a whole different manner. As far as the vegetation goes, I wasn't here in 2012, neither was Chad. I can't speak to what was done, but certainly Chad has been meeting with property owners individually, and I won't speak for him, but I will. I know that he's been trying to work with everybody to address how do we build a beach, maintain and sustain a beach, comply with the rules of the county and this town with having these dune plantings. We know there's a lot of consternation about dunes, and they block views and all the different things that people have talked about. But in the dune management plan, there are provisions for pruning and maintaining the dunes that the property owner had the opportunity to abide by. So we're proposing those same exact paragraphs in this new dune management plan. We're not changing those. You can even reconfigure, as Chad said. We're asking to be able to reconfigure. So that's something that, good.
You say, the thing is, we never had that problem for the parking lot before they put in the new street and the new dunes. So.
Well, I'm looking at your dune plantings on your property, and they're not causing your flooding on your parking lot. I mean, you have, again, two perpendicular dunes that go out towards the Gulf with a really small piece that sits hundreds of feet seaward of your property. The water's not stopping at that little bit of planting and backing all the way up into your parking lot. Now, maybe something happened on the uplands, or there was additional development since...
1971? No.
Well, there's more impervious surface on the island since 1971.
Well, yes. In fact, we took out a blacktop driveway and put in pavers, which I would think would have been no?
It'd be impervious, yeah. Pavers are not pervious, even impervious pavers, unless you clean them and maintain them.
Well, which we do.
Yeah?
Yeah, right?
So, yeah, I mean, I would encourage, this seems more like a stormwater issue rather than a beach issue.
Okay,
But there are stormwater solutions to stormwater problems.
Yeah, but the one thing I would say, I don't know what happens to people who are not going to sign your easement. Does that kill the entire project?
So that's a great question. So make sure everybody hears that. So what happens if someone does not sign their easement? If you don't sign your easement, and let's say you're within the project that has the erosion control line established, which is from the north end down to Lanark, we can only place sand seaward of the erosion control line. And that happened in the 2012 project. One property owner refused to sign their easement, and the sand came up to his property line on the north, went around the erosion control line, and started back to the south, and in essence, a bathtub was created.
Yes.
So there's
Lasted until the first storm. Now he's got a flat beach, and everybody at his place can see the ocean and see the beach, and everybody who signed can't see Jack. That's how it ended up working. So I want to have the beach renourished. I'm definitely for renourishing the beach. The thing is that I don't like these walls that are being built around our properties. Thank you.
So, Ms. Vicky, I'll just add in the beach dune management document, there is a provision for dune reduction, and that's been submitted to FDEP for their approval. So it is something that we've heard from you, we've listened, and we are advocating for that.
Thank you.
For the record, my name is Bill Perry. I groomed those areas, the beach. And I worked with those property owners years ago with the dune systems that were put in there. Some of them were done in error. Kona is for one of the examples. Gateway Villas, I wasn't able to give Kona or Gateway Villas any input on where they put their dunes. And what's created at Gateway and at Kona is you have those long perpendicular to the Gulf dune lines, which catches wind on Kona's property on one side, so you got that wall. And then the neighboring property, Mr. Greenspan is here, he's got a huge wall, because we've got these long diagonal dunes, and when the winds blow out of the northwest, when the cold fronts come through in the dry season, when sand migrates, they get taller and taller. They create these diagonal walls, almost like fences between the properties. The issue with flooding at Gateway Villas, I personally feel, as someone who's groomed that beach for 20 years, I didn't have that issue before that small frontal dune was placed there, because the sand would blow in and get caught in the bowl that's created by the diagonal dunes. Personally, I feel, and this is something that Chad and I have discussed, there's gonna have to be dunes changed at the north end of the island, because now after these many years, we realize there's where they were placed in the wrong places. And if the dune at Gateway Villas is brought back, to where their lawn and their railroad ties end, and their vegetation is planted there, and they have more than enough dune, they meet the requirements, what they have. But if it's brought back, they will no longer have that issue with the pond, because the sand will naturally come in, just by wind-blown sand, and it'll build up in front, and then it'll shed like it's supposed to out to the Gulf. But I think you're gonna have to really address some of these massive diagonal dunes that have just grown and grown over the years, especially since sand was placed and the beach was much further out before we've had the erosion over the last many years. And that sand has just deposited, and those walls have gotten taller and taller.
This is Gabriella Miyamoto from Gateway Villas. So when you talk about the diagonal dunes, you're talking basically about the property separator.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if those were mandated at the time of the renourishment, or those were just.
No, it was Don Disharon, who was the president at the time, who came up with your plan of the way your dunes were going to be created, and I didn't agree with him, and well, you have what you have now. But yeah, the diagonal dunes, that's one of the problems you have there, because you have that outer dune, and then you have the ones on the side, and then when the rains hit, the water's trapped in there, and you don't have the sand migrating in like it used to and keep that area high, and because that frontal dune blocks it. So if that frontal dune was brought back, then you would gain the sand in there, and you wouldn't have that issue with ponding. And it's similar to Kona.
So the little dune that runs parallel between the two property divider dunes, that would be taken away, or that would be expanded, or moved back, or?
You have to do 75% of your property. So take it out where it is and move it back up to where your railroad ties are. And then plant, where you have your railroad ties in your palms, up on the grass, you have the grass lawn, you have the access point, and then you have that area. That's where you would want that back there, because then you would not get, the sand is being starved. That dune is being stopped from blowing in where it should be. And that's been an issue for you and also at Kona, because Kona has the two pincers that come in. And that's what's always created a problem there. And then on the other side, Kona's has gotten huge because on the other side, Mr. Greenspan's has got a huge open area, and the sand blows from the northwest and just has built that up because the beach was much bigger, and over the last several years, it's just gotten taller and taller. But that's just my observations from taking care of that part of the island, and then also hearing what you have to say. And I've discussed it with folks.
I'm sorry, what was your name again? This has been enormously helpful.
Bill Perry.
Bill Perry, thank you.
Okay, well, that's all I have to say. I mean, you know, nothing's perfect. We did the best we could. Keith Lackinen and I went to all the properties. Some of the properties had already designed their dunes before, you know, we got a chance to talk to them, and so that's where they wanted them, so that's where they ended. But at other meetings with Mr. Landisi was at our meeting of the condo people, it seemed to work out really well there. Those folks are really happy. And then at other places we worked, Royal Beach Club, Bel Air Beach Club, their dune was wiped out at the storm 2 years ago, which caused all that damage down at Leonardo. They can't wait to get their dune back because they keep their chaise lounges for their guests behind the dune. And it worked for them. But there's other places on the island where the dunes that were laid out were not done well. And now's our chance, and I've told everybody, get involved and design the dunes with the help of Chad. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I would more say with the help of Mr. Poff. He's a coastal engineer. He does this up and down the state as well as over in the Barrier Islands, over in Louisiana. He has a lot of experience, and I'm sure with his expertise, we can help mitigate your concerns.
This is Chris Lister. I am the president of the Terramar Condominium Association. The address is 7100 Estero Boulevard. We are immediately across the street from Santini Plaza and right behind the 7-Eleven. So that puts our property on the south end, mid to south. I don't know how it is in your maps, actually. I'd assume it's on the south end. And the estuary is centered in front of our property. There are, Cresciente is to our south and is on the estuary, and then Island Winds, and I can't remember, the other one is on the north. There's 4 properties on this estuary. What is going to happen, what is proposed for the renovation project for the sand pathway that is between the estuary and our properties?
You got that pulled up, Mr. Michael, or you want me to bring my computer?
No, I'm bringing it up. I'm trying to figure out what he means by estuary, I guess.
The estuary is the water basin that is the inland water basin where all the birds are all the time, especially this time of the year.
Project starts right here, down.
If you'll look at Santini Plaza and the 7-Eleven, it's 1.5 miles from the bridge that goes over to Lover's Key, 1.5 miles north of the bridge to Lover's Key.
Gotcha. Right now, we're not proposing any activity on that particular stretch. The beach, as I mentioned, the designation begins at R203, which is where we've observed the erosion. And so we're going to try to fix the ponding issues along the open wide area to the north of you, and then the beach fill limits start just south of you at R203 and extend south. Now, we're permitting the entire. We're proposing to permit the entire beach for a couple of reasons. Number one is this is what it looks like today, but till we go to construction, things can change. If we have 1 or 2 multiple storms this summer, and conditions change on the beach, we don't want to have to go back and re-permit. So we will have the ability to put sand in this area if we all agree as a community that this is the project we want to do. And so we're recommending, secondly, if we put this into a project, as one of the gentlemen read from Island Winds, that staff reported that if we construct the beach to an engineered template, in the future, you'll be eligible for post-storm recovery assistance from FEMA. So if a storm, so you build your beach to an engineered template. Subsequently, a major storm erodes that beach, and it's deemed a disaster. A declaration of disaster is done. The town can apply for funding from FEMA to pay for the sand that was eroded specifically to that storm. And FEMA can sometimes pay up to 90% of that cost to put the sand back on the beach that's eroded from a declared storm. So there's a lot of benefits to being in the engineered beach program.
So if sand is needed to be added, because that area floods during the summer rains and whatever, you know, the diagram that we're looking at is not the right diagram. If you can move the diagram south, please. To the south.
Next slide, please.
Yeah, can we shift slides?
We have to go.
Hello, Mr. Chris. Can you please state your name, your full name for the record? Thank you.
Chris Lissner, Lissner. Yes, if you look at this slide.
There we go.
No, go back a slide, please. This slide's fine. If you.
Is that the slide?
I gotta expand it to see. Yes, that's the slide. So that body of water that is in between the Gulf and Estero Boulevard, there's a body of water you can see sort of in that slide, right at the end of
Yep.
the Wyndham. It starts at the end of the Wyndham and then goes down towards the end of Cresciente.
Yep.
That body of water. There's a walkway. If you zoom in on it, you can see that is on the east side of that body of water. And you've got a dotted line kind of around it. And I don't know why that dotted line is around the estuary. But that walkway that you can see in front of Island Winds, Terra Mar, and Cresciente has gotten depressed over time, so that when it rains during the summers, the water completely covers that pathway, and there's literally no way out of our properties to get to the beach.
Right.
Because it goes underwater.
So is the walkway, this is like a sand bridge, or
Yes.
is there a proper?
Just sand. It's just sand that, it's like that. My understanding is that estuary formed after a storm sometime in the 80s, and that all used to be beach and then turned into an estuary, and now it has all kinds of birds in it and mangroves and everything. It's a lovely element, but we have to be able to get out of our properties and onto the beach.
Yep, I hear your concern, and perhaps that's something that we can discuss at a later date, but at this time, I don't see where the Renourishment project would address that issue. Mr. Michael?
Yeah, that's in the critical wildlife area. I don't know that we'd be allowed to place sediment in there because of the protection that affords. We could put sand seaward of but that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about right up against the back of your property line.
Right.
That dashed line you're referring to is the limits of the critical wildlife area.
Well, it would be to the east of the critical wildlife area, not into the estuary. I mean, there's a pretty wide margin between where the estuary actually starts and where that sand pathway is. Today there is, with it being dry.
Yeah, I think that's something that if you can send me an email, Chad, CHADD.
Yep, I got it. Yep. Okay, I'll do it. Thank you for your time.
Chat about that. You're most welcome.
Hi, this is Jim Murley from Estero Island Beach Club,
Jim,
and I have a question.
Jim, hold on one second. We have someone that's been at the podium standing now for about 10 minutes. I'm going to let her go, and then we'll come back to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Monica Tezak. I'm on a single-family home on R87 or something. It's on Chapel Street, right across the street. And it says in the letter that we want to get the beach back to its historical restoration. I've got photos that my house has been on the beach for over 100 years. It's probably the oldest house on the beachfront. It's withstand numerous hurricanes. And I looked on Lee County's property assessor's lines, and looked at from my property line to the beach. 1998, I believe it was, is the last time. It was 75 feet to the water's line. Right now, it's 617 feet to the water line. It has it's increased 7-fold in less than 25 years. I don't want any more sand in front of my house. I know you're saying it's not gonna get it, but I'm getting the dredging that's coming from Matanzas Pass. You guys keep putting it in front of my house. I can't handle any more sand. I have to grade my driveway in order to park my cars. Sand is blowing up the street. You can look on Cottage Street. Nobody grades it from the town. There's sand sitting on the road because we're indenting it and we're overwhelmed with sand. I don't want any more sand there. We don't need any more sand. We have grown 7-fold since, in 25 years. There's areas of this beach that don't need it. We don't want it. I'm not gonna sign an easement for it because once I sign it, I'm never gonna get that back. The erosion control line on my area is on Chapel Street. She's on Cottage Street. So that means, in theory, that the town can go and anything, if a storm comes and damages it, I may not be able to build my house again because you're gonna say it's a critical area and I can't build it. I'm not gonna sign anything. I hope that most people don't sign it because then you're giving away your property rights. We have very little property rights now. I won't get in political things, but this is one of our property rights. And I'm not gonna give it away, but I wanna know, what are you guys using as a historical information for this restoration?
Well, let's talk about the erosion control line is on the beach, so it's not on
And
your
what is the one that's
property.
Construction
line.
control.
That's the coastal construction control line, which is
That's the CCL, that's at my
Correct.
deck. That's at my deck. There's another line.
So that's, the one that's at your deck is actually the 1978, that's since been rescinded. The new 1991 that is the active construction control line is closer to maybe Estero. And then the 78 is, the 1978 is a zoning line now where you can't build into the EC zone. So that's what the town uses as a zoning line. It's also called the Lee County Construction Control Line.
Right.
And then the ECL is further onto the beach.
Is it, so do you know where it is on mine?
Yes, ma'am, we can point that out later. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to know what historical information, you say it in the letter, that, again, I'm with everybody else. We get this in our email sent to us yesterday afternoon, basically 24 hours before this meeting. But it says you want to get it back to historical conditions. I've got photos of my house from 1940. The beach is way bigger than that.
And we're not going to disagree with you. There are properties and places on the beach that do not need sand today. Well, I've said that before. The reason your beach has grown in width was what you said. The Corps of Engineers, when they dredge the inlet, they place 130 to 150,000 yards of sand along that part of the beach in the water line, and over time that accretes and attaches onto your beach. The town does not do that. That's done by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We are in touch with the Corps of Engineers to talk to them about, can we work together so that when they place their sand, they don't keep putting it in the same spot every time because there's other areas on the beach that would benefit from it. So Chad's been talking to the representative from the Corps of Engineers to see if we can't work together to try to reduce the glut of sand in one area and maybe distribute it along the shoreline.
So I understand there's another dredging going to happen.
Yeah, February 2023, I believe, by the U.S. Corps.
That's what they have indicated to us. That's really subject to congressional funding, but that's what they're targeting for the next dredging event.
Could you send me their information so I can petition them not to put it in front of my house?
I can try and do my best. Yeah, I'm not sure what the avenue would that be. Yes, ma'am, I can do my best. I would also, Mr. Michael, if you can speak to width versus elevation benefits in that area.
Sure. So while the beach may be extra wide, it's also very low. So in terms of providing a storm damage reduction benefit, we also want some elevation added in certain areas. So some places we're going to recommend just adding elevation to the beach, not widening it.
But doesn't that take it from my property line then? It's going to flood my property next to my house then. If you elevate the sand to the high water line, when it rains, It's gonna be just like these guys on the south end. When it rains, the water's coming down the street. It's always gonna, dome shape. It's gonna come down the street, it's gonna pocket right in front of my house, and it's not gonna go to the beach.
So if you look at the cross-section that's on the screen right now, this is just south of your home. The red line is the existing grade, and the colored lines to the seaward of that are the proposed grade. So we are not recommending to elevate the beach higher than the existing grades that are on the beach today. So we're not going to create a ponding problem with the beach because the grades landward of that are much higher, a foot to 2 feet higher landward of our proposed elevations.
And also included the maintenance grading and alleviation of pooling issues that they may be having because of the low-lying condition.
So the other thing we've asked in the permit is to be able to then, let's say 4 years from now, because of coastal processes, stormwater runoff, whatever the case may be, if we need to come in and regrade the beach to create that positive uniform drainage, we're asking for that in the permit that we can do that. So we're trying to help everybody in that regard.
And the state is gonna pay for all this renourishment, correct?
No, ma'am, not at all. The state has a program by which the town is allowed to apply for funding, and it's only for those areas that are designated critically eroding, and they pay a percentage. It's all based on public access. So we've done a public access eligibility assessment. We've submitted that to the state, and so the town will receive a significant portion of funding from the state and also from Lee County TDC, but they do not pay 100%. The most DEP the state would pay is 50%. And after that, it's up to TDC and how much they would pay. And so right now, we can't tell you what that's going to be because we don't know if this section from 200 to 203 will be designated critically eroding. And the challenge that we have before us as a community is there's a lawsuit that property owners on the south end outside of the fill limits are suing the state of Florida over some property rights. The outcome of that lawsuit will affect the designation of the critical wildlife area. The critical wildlife area is a state-managed property, and if, I guess how the courts would rule, if they rule that the state owns that land, the state will pay 100%. That is the only time the state pays 100% is if they own the land. So if it's a state park or a critical wildlife area owned by the state, they'll pay 100% of any sand placed along the shoreline of a critical wildlife area. So we can't say how much they're going to pay today because there's still two big questions to be answered, but they should be answered by this summer.
Our property owners will pay the rest through our property taxes.
Well, it's my understanding that the town has not said that they're going to come tax anybody for their portion of it. Now, that I don't know that it's been determined yet, but they'd have to set up what's called a municipal services benefit unit or a municipal services taxing unit. They can't take property taxes to pay for the beach, is my understanding. They have to come from a specified taxing. But again, I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone, and so please don't hold me to that. I'm your engineer and your technical representative. But how other communities have paid for it, they've either used TDC funds or general funds, or they have set up a special taxing unit, which goes through workshops and hearings, and they set up a millage rate and things.
Okay, so what happened to all the sand that happened that was put at the north end of the island 12 years ago?
It has eroded to the south. It has also eroded offshore, and it has rolled into the inlet. It's gone all different directions.
Okay, and it will happen again. Mother Nature's going to do whatever she wants to do, and so we'll do this, and this is something we will have to continue to do every 10 to 12 years.
If you want to maintain a beach of that magnitude for recreational and storm damage reduction benefits, yes.
All right, so we're only doing this for the storm damage benefits. It's not, I mean, this island has grown in the last 100 years. It's grown tremendously, especially at the north end of the island. It has grown, and the south end has grown. So I'm thinking the south end, we're probably getting the sand from Lover's Key, and Matanzas Pass is getting it from where we did beach renourishment in 2012. So that, and then is just going back and going to put it right in front of my house. So that's why my area is growing, is because Matanzas Pass is getting filled in. So every time we do this, it's going to continue. We're just going to be moving sand around. So I'm not going to vote for it, but that's everybody else.
So we'll take, Jim, you were on the virtual, and then I have two here in the room, so.
Sure.
did
Thank
promise
you.
Jim to go.
Again, this is Jim Murley. I'm board president of the Sterile Island Beach Club, which is just north of Diamond Head. We're wedged between the two beach access roads or outlets, whatever. My question, could you please clarify? I understand the 75%, but where does that start in terms of our seawall, as an example, and where does it end going towards the Gulf? You understand my question?
So the 75% is measured along the shoreline. So if you have 100 feet of seawall, your dune plantings must be along 75 feet of the 100. And you could have all 75 feet in a row. You could have 37.5 feet with a 25-foot wide gap, and then 37.5 feet. That's up to the individual property owner. As you head towards the Gulf, it needs to be 10 feet wide.
How close does it have to be to the seawall?
That's up to the property owner, as I understand it. You could put it immediately adjacent to it, or you can move it out onto the beach. Chad, is there something that talks about how far you can move it from the seawall?
Yeah, it can't go beyond the ECO.
Cannot go beyond the ECL. So it has to be on your private property.
Could you not use acronyms because some of us don't know what that means?
It cannot go beyond the erosion control line, which is the surveyed, recorded boundary between your property and state lands.
This is Greg Webb at Sandrak with a clarifying question for those, and Sandrak does not have an ECL. We are not in that area, and not shown on your map, but certainly shown on the page 9 of the Estero Island Erosion Control Project. It shows a vegetation line, kind of a hash that's on that profile of the beach. Is that the extent to which the dunes could be placed? Or can you explain what that vegetation line means?
Are you referring to the construction easement drawing labeled Exhibit A?
That is correct.
So we prepared, this is Michael Poff, we prepared a sketch for the town to use when they submitted the letter to you with your easements. And so the easement area is the area that goes from the erosion control line landward to either existing vegetation or existing armoring. That's where we were going to have to work on private property. And within that easement area is where you have to plant your 10-foot wide at-grade dune plantings. So what Chad has just clarified is that 10-foot wide, you can move that as far seaward up until you hit the erosion control line within the easement area. So if you're having to plant new vegetation, you can make it as far landward as you want or as far seaward as the erosion control line. So you'd go to the erosion control line and go back 10 feet, and that would count for your dune plantings along 75% of your shoreline frontage.
And again, there's no erosion control line outside of our property.
Yes, sir. At the Sandrak, that is correct.
We're basically in that area between R200 and R203.
Yes, yes, sir. At the Sandrak, you are correct. No ECL is there, or nor is it proposed.
So how far? So we're proposing to put sand. How far seaward can they put the dune then?
Well, I mean, theoretically to the mean high water.
I don't think the state would allow that. We'll have to get back to you on that question. We'll have to find out from the state of Florida how far seaward, because you would take up all the sea turtle nesting habitat, and that would violate the Threatened and Endangered Species Act. So we'll have to find out how far seaward a dune could go on a property that doesn't have the erosion control line.
And again,
on that same topic, Vic Barrett's from Strandview. In our part of the island, in the center of the island, the erosion control line is landward of our pool and other amenities. How does that fit into the whole picture that you're talking about?
I think you might be thinking of the coastal construction control line. The erosion control line is on the beach.
I'm not thinking of a coastal construction line. Look at the center, look at the central map.
Yeah, to my knowledge, the erosion control line is only existing out on the dry sandy beach. It never went landward of anybody's property. Any structure?
We are immediately next to Newton Park.
All right, we'll take a look at it. We'll look at the platted line and we'll look at your infrastructure and, but to my knowledge, the erosion control line never went landward of structures.
Well,
Maybe a dune walkover.
I looked at your detailed map, and on the detailed map, it is our swimming pool. Most of our swimming pool is seaward of that line, and actually the same applies to Newton Park itself, which is not private property, but which is, I suppose, subject to the same renourishment constraints as we are next door. The erosion control line is landward of the seawall in Newton Park.
Yeah, we can double check that on the survey.
Will you get back to me on that?
Yep. Yes, sir. I'm happy to. Do you have email available to yourself?
Yeah.
If I could just ask you, because we're dealing with so many people here and you're on virtual, if you could email me and just remind me of your question and who you are, and I'll be happy to get back to you with the survey.
All right, I'll do that.
Thank you.
To Chad, right?
Yes, sir. CHADD@fmbgov.
Yep.
My name is Vito Scarimbolo. I'm Leonardo Harm. I have 3 questions here. Are you familiar with the beach condition in the vicinity of our condominium first? Would you recommend that we install a seawall? And would you please enlighten me with the construction easement?
Yes, I am familiar with it. As an engineer, I would say use whatever technically available option that's permittable, I should say, by the state of Florida. And so if you can get a seawall designed and permitted there to protect your property, that's what you should do. Because this project, the earliest it's going to go to construction is late summer of 2023. And your property is very vulnerable. And so I understand that Humeston and Moore is trying to get you some relief through temporary measures, and you're fighting with the agencies. Unfortunately,
it's a sad sight. You know, when you're fighting with those people, you apply for a permit since March,
right?
And it's taking this much time to just get this. It's just that's not right. That's all there is to it. So I mean, but those are the agencies that we're dealing with it. So how, as far as the construction easement, how does that apply? I mean, how does that work?
Sure. So, unfortunately, for you, because your beach is eroded back to your basically the wall of your parking lot, the ECL will be set at that particular location. You won't have to sign a construction easement because all the work will be done on state-owned land.
We don't have to worry about that.
Correct, at this time. Now, if there's a miraculous event this summer that puts sand in front of your place naturally,
I'll let you know.
it's a different story, but that'll be a good thing, right? If we have a natural accretion in front of your Leonardo Arms and you have to sign your easement, that would be a positive thing, so.
So we don't have to worry about the easement then. Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
Hi, this is Bill Altoff from Shamron Beach.
Hang on one second, we're still clarifying the question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Would you just get...
My name is Renee Van Summeren. I'm also at Leonardo Arms. There's a section of our property that still has sand there, beach there, and you know, there's several buildings, and building 1 has a larger section than we do. We're the ones that building 2 is the ones that where it's really eroding.
Okay.
So I imagine we will have to, and since we're separate corporations, each building, I imagine that they both have to
Very good
sign
point.
the easement, right?
Correct. For the building that still has sandy beach, yes, you'll want to sign your easement so we can put more sand there.
Yeah. Okay. And there's an erosion control line established by Leonardo Arms there, or not?
There is not, and so that also revolves around this lawsuit. So if the critical wildlife area goes away and it's no longer state land, we will have to come in and set an erosion control line before we build the project along the stretch from R203 to R207, which is Leonardo Arms down to, what's the southern property, Joe? At 207?
Sun Caper.
Sun Caper.
The other thing then is the critical wildlife area. Essentially, there is no critical wildlife area in front of our building anymore. That was gone years ago. Some of it has been filled when they did the dredging of Big Carlos Pass. So I don't know if there's a benefit to doing away with it or delisting it or whatever they do now to get rid of it. But is it a benefit for us not to have that designation there as the critical wildlife area? Because right now, like I said, the water's coming right up to the dock, and the dock, they say part of the dock is within the critical wildlife area, and it was back in the 90s and early 2000s, but it's been gone for years.
So obviously in this area that's so eroded, everything is gone in that particular area. In terms of should we have it or not have it, from an environmental standpoint, there could be opportunity to enhance in the future. But from a financial standpoint, if the critical wildlife area remains designated as such and it's owned by the state will pay 100% to put the sand along that section from R203 to R207. So that's a pretty good benefit to the locals in terms of it being state-owned land.
So then, let me finish off with, and then I'll be done. The project funding, you talked about the funding, and there's somebody asked about the percentage that this town pays as opposed to Lee County and the state. It hasn't been funded completely yet, has it? The project?
You are correct. We are waiting for the decision of the lawsuit and the outcome.
Okay.
So that we understand that ratio and relationship. And then we're working with Lee County and the Tourist Development Council on what's called an interlocal agreement, because their funding will come over like a 2-year period. And so you're correct. The construction is not 100% funded, but between now and prior to construction, that will all be figured out.
And then for permits, you've got mostly, well, you don't have the permits yet, but you also have to apply for a permit or get approval from the Corps of Engineers?
Correct. So we made an application for the project back in December. We've received what's called a request for additional information from the state. We had just responded to that. We've just sent the information in. We feel confident that we will have all, if not the majority of all the information in. We're pushing hard on the feds to try to get that review initiated. That's our critical path right now.
Okay, and then the final thing is you're planning on starting, or you're hoping to start, fourth quarter of 2023?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Let me go back to...
Question, if I could.
Sorry, one more.
It's related to the whole subject.
Sure.
When we're talking about the easement section, because we are 3 different corporations, so does each of the corporation have to sign off on this? So,
Correct. Yes.
Because of building 2 does not have to, so we don't really have to come out in construction.
Well, let me say this.
Not according to what he said.
Let me say this. You want the sand. You want to work with the town. We don't know what conditions will be like a year and 2 months from now. Let's recommend everybody sign the easement that wants to be in the project. That way we know you want to be in. That's also kind of an indication that you're supportive of the project. If you don't want to sign easement, we understand that there are people who aren't going to sign it, and that's okay. This is your property, and we're not trying to impinge and push something on top of you. We've been asked to put together a technical beach management plan that makes sense to address the different erosion, ponding, and other environmental constraints, but we understand it's not going to be accepted by everybody. And we've worked with other communities around the state of Florida. I've been doing this now for almost 30 years in Florida. There'll be gaps in the beach fill that we'll work around because people did not sign their easements. And that's a personal decision you all have to make. And so we want to try to educate you, but I'm not here to tell you, ma'am, you need to sign your easement because of this, because you live in a place that has benefited from the beneficial use to the point where you're kind of sick of having too much sand. And I appreciate that. But then Leonardo Arms is like, bring the sand to us. We want the sand. You talked about where the sand going. All the sand in front of their property has now moved around and is sitting in the Big Carlos Pass lobe on the south end of the island. And they have, 900, 1,000 feet of beach? And so the complaint I hear from them is that I can't even hear the water lap anymore because the beach is so far away from my window. So as a coastal engineer, you think that's not really a complaint that you really should be complaining about, but I understand, and I've dealt with all kinds of challenges. My feet get too burned when I walk through the hot sun to get to the water. And so please don't take our message up here as we're trying to push everybody. But when you have a beach in the condition of Leonardo Arms, I know you guys have been here helping the town, and that's a wonderful thing. So everything we can do to work together to help you, we want to do.
Paul, what I was trying to say, if there's no need, we definitely need sand. And I
Right.
don't care which way you're gonna
Right.
do it.
But in retrospect,
The question was, should the other
Right.
two association would have to sign, you know?
right. In retrospect, I think,
All I was trying to say, I think, yeah, we haven't, they don't need the sand as much as we can get. And we need it now, to be very honest with you.
understand. In retrospect, I'm going to change my answer. You should sign the easement. Now I have a gentleman online who's been waiting patiently. I believe it's Chris, and then we'll come back to the room.
That was Bill Altoff was trying to get in before.
Okay, please go ahead.
All righty. I am at Bill Altoff, the president of Shamron Beach at 7650 Estero Boulevard. And we are tucked in behind the Little Estero Critical Wildlife Area. And how would this beach replenishment affect us? Would you be pumping sand on the golf side of that little pond? Or do you
Yes, just on the Gulf side.
just on the golf side, you would fill that in? Now, our property goes to, I believe, the mean high tide of the Gulf of Mexico. How would you pumping sand in there affect our ownership?
So we are going to have to set an erosion control line if the critical wildlife area goes away. If the critical wildlife area stays, then nothing will change. If it goes away and we have to set an ECL, erosion control line, then sometime this fall, we will conduct a mean high water survey, which is to measure elevations of the beach along that segment, and we'll create a survey plat, just like they did back in prior to the 2012 project, and we will submit that to the state of Florida and request that they review it. Division of State Lands will review it, give us their comments, we'll tweak it till they're satisfied. Then we'll be back in this room sometime in 2023 for a public hearing and a public workshop that everyone within the erosion control line, and I think it's some distance north and south and east and west of that line, get invited. There'll be a certified mailing sent to every property owner that could be affected by the erosion control line, and we have a public hearing, and an official officer of the state of Florida will come down and preside over a hearing and listen to the audience. And so you'll have another chance to voice your opinion about the project and the erosion control line. And if, let's say everybody in the room walks in and says, this is crazy, we don't want it, stop it, they won't set the erosion control line, and we'll all go home. There won't be a project. Now, hopefully we've, as a community, have worked out ahead of time that that's not going to happen, and we don't waste the officers' time to come down here. But it certainly could happen that people object to it. And what has happened in the past and other projects I've worked on is we've created gaps in the erosion control line and gaps in the fill to address those people who do not want the project. Their neighbors aren't very happy who do want it, but that's just part of where we live and the opportunity that we have for freedom of choice and those kind of things. So
if I'm looking at this map right, you have a red dotted line. I guess that's just the mean high water from May of 2021. Is that what that is? I'm trying to figure out where you would put the erosion control line. Roughly.
yeah, I think it's a solid, it's more like a blue line, isn't it?
Yeah, so the erosion control line would be the mean high water within 6 months at the time of construction. So, let's see, is it the blue line that's the mean high water line?
Yes, but that's from like 2021, so whatever.
Right. So that mean high water line is dated, but you know, it would move around somewhere thereabouts, wherever it's surveyed at the time, or 6 months within construction would be the erosion control line. The dotted red line, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Michael, is the design where we'd be placing sand?
Correct.
Okay, so that would make the beach fairly wide there. It seems to be naturally accreting right now, but like other people have said, Mother Nature gives and takes away pretty quickly. Now, again, to get back to my point on the ownership, if you blow the sand in and we agree to give you permission to do this, does that mean you then own that land?
So the erosion control line, let's just say the critical wildlife area goes away and we set an erosion control line. That's the pre-construction mean high water line. From that point, seaward is public land, and from that point, landward is private land. So even though we place sand on your private land, it remains privately owned, which is why we have to get the easement, is to allow us to work on private property.
Now, if I recall correctly with the dunes, they are 18 to 24 inches tall and 10 feet wide and 75% of the property, correct?
Well, the height is there'll be dune plantings at grade. There's a selection of plants in the list. So as far as the height goes, it really is dependent on the selection of the plants, but also as just been discussed here, certain plants will trap wind-blown sand. So the dune could trap sand and grow in height. But there are provisions for pruning. I believe that Chad has from his predecessors in the document.
Right, there's provisions for trimming, and there are provisions for maintaining the height of the dunes in the dune management document.
Okay, and where can I get copies of that?
If you email me, I'm happy to send you a copy, or if you come to town hall, I'm happy to print one out for you.
All right, Chad, very good. And the last question is, you said you sent out letters already. Do you know where you sent it for Shamron? Did it go to the property manager?
No, sir, not yet. It will be coming out to you shortly, though.
Okay, but again, it would go to the property manager. Is that where it goes?
It's going to go to the registered agent for the association on LIPA. It's listed on the Lee County Property Appraiser.
Registered agent. Okay. All right, I do appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, Chad's got a whole line of people here, so I know he's got it figured out who's coming next. So if you're virtual, sit tight for a few minutes. I promise you we'll stay till all the questions are answered, or we write them down and try to get you answers.
Chad, Michael, how y'all doing today?
Well, thank you. And yourself?
The lawsuits, Ed Rude from 8150 Estero. The lawsuits that you mentioned a little bit earlier, I've got a couple of questions that you might be able to answer for me. You mentioned that you felt like the funding would be figured out by summer, late or the end of summer. I guess you're basing that opinion or that assumption on the fact that the lawsuit will have played itself out and the ownership will have been determined by that time. Okay.
That is correct. That's what the state officials have told us, is that it goes to trial this summer.
Right.
So by summer's end, they anticipate having that decision rendered, and so they'll be able to make a final determination on their percentage of the funding.
Okay. My question, a couple of questions concerning that. I'm assuming from what you're saying that the project won't be able to move forward until there is a determination made. Is that the way you understand it?
No, the how it is paid for is reliant on that decision. The project could move forward. The town could enter into a contract with the state at some agreed upon percentage, probably would be the low end, and then move forward. And then the town has up to 3 years to get reimbursed for expenses. So they would have 3 years to ask the state to pay the difference. Let's say it takes 3 years to get that decided. Then we'd have 3 years to try to get that money back from the town's perspective. And I'm not saying the town's going to front the money, but I'm saying that that option exists.
That answers an additional question. You answered two questions for me at the same time. So if the litigation were to continue and continue on, the only way the project would move forward is if the town fronted the money and then waited to be reimbursed.
So the way the grants work with both TDC and the state is it's always a reimbursement. And so you work out the reimbursement schedule with both entities. So I'm going to just use some common sense that, let's say that the lawsuit continues and there's not a determination, then we could propose to the state and to Lee County that we assume that the critical wildlife area goes away and that we have the lowest percentage of input from the state and the TDC. And it can only get better for the town after that. You enter into your contract with the opportunity to seek additional funding if that ownership changes.
I see. And then, do you happen to know off the top of your head, let's assume the critical wildlife area did go away. Can you tell everyone an approximate amount of money that it would cost the town and it would cost the county?
Sure. Can you guys advance the slides? We do have that computed. And so rather than go off from memory, it's a couple $1 million different swing. So keep going, please. There's a financial table. One more. Okay, stop there, please. Okay, so if the critical wildlife area goes away, the state share goes from 13.9 million, drops to 9.1. The counties goes up from 6.8 to 9.9, but they could also say, well, you know what? We're not going to pay along that area. Now, it's based on public access, and so there are lots of public access points with bus stops, with access that we're working on with Leonardo Arms. They've offered to create a 5-foot wide access through their property to help improve public access. There's another property that I understand, and we have a slide on it. So I guess cutting to the chase, there's your numbers. So the towns goes up about 1.3 million. The counties could potentially go up about 3 million to make up that about $4 million difference there that the states drops.
I see. That answers that question also. So, and then if the lawsuits were to continue even longer than the 3 years, after the 3 years, then the town wouldn't be able to get reimbursed. It would be over.
That's a great question. This could be an extenuating circumstance, but it's my understanding you have up to 3 years after the project is complete to apply for it. So
okay.
Whether they make an extenuating exemption for this one, I don't know, but.
And so all of this wouldn't be an issue. This could all turn into a non-issue if these lawsuits, if there were some type of an agreement made between the property owners in the state of Florida. If the property owners were to drop the lawsuit and walk away, everything would stay as it is right now, and all of this extra money, this 1.3 and 3.1.
4.8 million.
Yeah. That would all, it wouldn't be a problem anymore. It wouldn't be money that anyone would have to worry about because the state would automatically fund that money because the ownership wouldn't be an issue anymore.
That's what that's what the state officials have told us. Prior to the lawsuit, it was understood it was state-owned land and it was 100% state funding.
Well, it sounds to me like my suggestion would be to come up with some type of an agreement with these property owners, and so that they could go to the state of Florida and tell them that they weren't interested in owning the land. And that would resolve the issue 100%. Thank you.
Well spoken. Thank you. I think we got 2 more in the queue, and then we'll go back to virtual world.
My name is Russ Brigette. I live at Pelican Watch across the street. And I'm curious as to what activity is proposed for the beach in front of Pelican Watch.
Pelican Watch would be on the central segment.
Okay, so in the central segment, we're proposing to elevate the beach by adding some sand from an elevation standpoint, but not really widen the beach because of its current width.
Okay.
Some vegetation may be required there as well. You don't have vegetation.
We have vegetation there already. I'm just wondering how much more we need.
Yeah, no, they're covered. Mr. Perry knows the beach pretty well. He's saying none. I trust him.
Well, I don't know him, so.
We'd have to look at it closely, but you have to have 75% of the frontage has to be vegetated at least 10 feet wide. So we probably, maybe Chad could come out and meet you out there.
Yeah, just recalling from memory, I believe y'all had a sea turtle nest there in the last season or two, and there are dunes and vegetation all up against the building. So I believe y'all are 75% or more, so no more vegetation will be required.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Dennis Greenspan again. You've heard some frustration from some people, and I can tell you where that comes from. That I think it was 2012. There was a lot of arm twisting, a lot of pressure on people to sign the easements, and then the town did not keep its word in many cases. And people are smarting from that. I can tell you exactly what happened to Kona's parking lot. The contractor, and I know this for a fact, I was told by probably, I don't know how many predecessors I had, but whoever was in 2012, the contractor screwed up, it wasn't properly graded. It created a mini lake behind the new berm. They didn't have an ounce of flooding before that. I'm next door, so I know. I watch it all. They didn't have an ounce of flooding before that, and then it started to happen. The contractor missed properties. He brought sand up to the ECL, if that was the line that was being used at that time, and for some reason or other moved on. He didn't bring the elevations above the ECL up to where they were supposed to be. I know that for a fact. I don't have it in writing anywhere, I can't prove it, but what difference does it make? It was 10 years ago. But that's why you're hearing some of this stuff. People are wary. The town, I'm not saying anybody did it intentionally, but they sure didn't keep their word on everything that they said was going to happen. I do have another question. Are there any exceptions to any property owners, private or commercial? Are there any property owners along the beach that have an exemption to the vegetation requirement?
None that I'm aware of. What would?
I don't know, I'm just asking a general question.
If you already have vegetation, then you would be exempt from.
Are there any property owners that would be exempt from the requirement on the easement for vegetation?
No, sir, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, all right, thank you.
My name is Joseph Pugliese. I live next door to Newton Park in a single-family home, lived there for 8 years. I am totally against this project. I am probably in the narrowest part of the beach. I watch what the sand does. It moves from one end of the island to the other. No matter what you do, it's going to end up the same way. If you do put sand on that beach, you will get a tremendous amount of ponding. If you go down there in a heavy rain, you will see you start to form a lake from the heavy rains. If you have dunes, there's nowhere for the water to go. The water's going to become stagnant, and it's going to smell or turn into a critical wildlife area. Now, we saw what the replenishment was down north of the RV park. Walk down there today. They did that 3 or 4 years ago, and you could still smell how bad that is. That's not sand that you're putting on the beach. It's silt, and it stinks, and it has dead animals in it. Okay, I'll get closer. It's not sand that you're putting on the beach. It's silt with dead animals. That's what they did 3 or 4 years ago. You could walk down there today, and you can smell it. You already have a pond being formed there that's turning into another critical wildlife area. I do not want, like this lady here, to have 600 feet of sand in front of my house. I bought a beach house to live on the beach near the ocean. I don't want to visit it from a distance. You go to Myrtle Beach, you go to Ocean City, you go anywhere on Florida's coast, and you will see the beach homes there can no longer see the ocean. I am against this easement. And if anyone that lives on the beach should not sign it because you're going to lose your property rights, you're going to end up with a swamp, or you're not going to be able to see sunset.
The sand he was speaking to is Army Corps.
I don't know.
Hello, my name is Dave Ficelli, Sunset Condominium, 6400 Estero. I've known Chad for a little bit now. I've known Bill also, and a few other people in this room. Since I've bought here over 25 years ago, my beach has been accreting. Obviously, you're aware of that, Mr. Poff, with the engineering studies and historical data. We currently are in a state of accretion of approximately, depending on what monument you use, between 5 and 25 feet per year of accretion. We are the benefactor of unintended consequences from past beach renourishment projects. If sand, in my opinion, were to be placed in a low area to alleviate this temporary ponding issue that we have for maybe 2 to 3 months a year, the next event is just going to take that sand that was placed, wash it out another 30, 40, 50, 100 feet with a bigger pond remaining. I think money would be well spent if you were to partner with us and get a permit that would allow us with the state permitting to do a maintenance raking and shaping of our beach as needed without any encumbrance of our property. What do you think of that opinion?
Well, I think that places like Leonardo Arms, that's not going to work. There's no sand to
I'm
take care of them.
Again, I'm not talking Leonardo Arms, I'm talking our particular stretch of the beach, which is over the years. I mean, this place was built in 1979, we had approximately 100 feet of beach. Now we are, just like this young lady, over 600 feet deep, okay? We don't need any more sand, we don't want any more sand. We just want to be able to do with the sand we have, what needs to be done to take care of our issue. Can you submit permits for us on our behalf to allow us, at our own cost even, to shape the beach needed to eliminate the ponding for that 2 to 3 months a year?
If you were to try to change the mean high water shoreline, you need the town to be the applicant. So you, as a private property owner,
So if
cannot do it.
Our elected officials were to...
Let me finish.
Okay.
So there's insufficient volume above mean high water for you to address that whole ponding issue, which is why we're recommending we add some sand to fix the elevation. On those communities, like your area and other parts of Southwest Florida that have tried the regrading, they are back regrading almost on an annual basis. And it has become very expensive. Those communities, Marco in particular is the best example I can give, they finally decided to fix the solution by adding sand to raise the elevation because they were regrading almost on an annual basis, and the cost to do that became exorbitant. So that's why we're recommending not a simple regrading, but add some sand to bring up the elevation to address the overall riding problem.
But don't you agree that the next storm event would just cause another bellying of that stretch of beach?
Not if you bring the elevation up high enough, no. I don't agree with that statement.
Well, I've seen it. I've seen it where it's been level, and then the storm surge comes in, takes the water out, and takes the sand with it, and deposits another 20, 30, 40 feet out. And it's just going to happen again and again. We didn't ask for this sand. We were just, unfortunately, given that sand because we had a beautiful beach before this thing grew by 400 feet. So I think, you know, if it takes our town officials to permit or request on our behalf permitting, can that be done and submitted at the same time you submit your application?
Our application is well into the process, so we'd have to actually modify the application.
Right.
And it would be, instead of adding sand, what you're suggesting is you lop off, let's say you lop off 200 feet of beach and pull that sand landward to fill in the pond. Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm saying through a period of over years, as the sand moves, take sand from the beach side, bring it up, and slowly fill in that middle. I mean, there's not that much elevation change needed to be made. 18, 22 feet maybe? I mean, do you have a profile of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, we have it.
Where is your estimate? How many cubic yards of material?
I don't have it memorized, I apologize.
Okay, that's right.
It's on the order of, Chad, you remember it was like 75,000 yards or something in the ponding area?
Which is nothing.
Well, At
I mean-
20 bucks a yard, it's not nothing, it's
Well,
expensive.
no. Oh, you see, you missed the point. I already have it there. You don't need to bring it in. I can save you that money.
Well,
And the taxpayers that money.
the regrading costs are probably $10 to $12 a yard. That's what Marco paid for the regrading.
We're not doing it, again, it's a part of a maintenance project that's continual over time. That's all we're asking to do, not a get it done in 2-week project. Allow us to just rake the beach as we see fit to fill in the pond. And our problems go away. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like we got 2 more here, and then we'll go back to virtual.
I'm Gene Duffy, Board President of Leonardo Arms, Building 2. And correct me if I'm wrong, but based on the information that I've read, the contractor determines where he begins the project. Is that correct?
In general, yes, unless there's an environmental window that would affect that construction window.
It's not an environmental problem. It's a building problem. We are one storm away from devastation. You know that. So why are we leaving it up to the contractor when we are one storm away from major, major damage? I mean, it's at our front door. We can't wait in line. We have to be first. Everybody has their problems, but we're going to lose our home.
I would suggest you submit that to your elected officials, put that in writing to them as a recommendation. Ultimately, we all will report to them, they'll make the final decision.
Which elected officials are you referring to?
Your mayor and town council.
Okay, will do. But can you help us to make sure that they start at Leonardo Arms? Because we can't come in second. We cannot come in second.
Well, let me explain. I understand in your particular situation, but adjacent to you, to the very south, as where we're planning on putting sand, is the critical wildlife area where the birds nest. We're not allowed to work in that area during nesting season. So if this project starts during shorebird nesting season, I can't recommend that they run the pipe to your property, fill your property, and then take the pipe and go back to the north and fill the north and wait for nesting season to finish and come back.
Is that different than turtle season?
Shorebird nesting season goes from March 1st, I believe it is. Do you remember, Chad? It's slightly different, yes. It starts earlier than the turtles and ends earlier.
Okay, so then that's not an issue because there's going to be no renourishment before November 23. So that's not an issue at all. The issue is we're going to get wiped out if we're not first. That's the issue. And that has to be brought up. So thank you.
Thank you. Point well taken. Go ahead, and then we'll go back to the virtual. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone, for your patience, too. I know there's a lot of questions and people getting up and down and sitting up and down. So.
Sure, thank you. My name's Chip Faust. I'm the resort director at Hilton Sea Watch, the timeshare there on Fort Myers Beach. Our property is designated as R201, which is in the non-erosion area. And as far as we're concerned, again, we're hoping that they don't reclassify our part of the beach. We certainly sympathize with the other folks on the beach that are losing the sand. Again, like many of the folks that spoke today, our beach is growing. It's more than 1,000 feet from our gate to the water at this point. So actually, we end up more than once a year moving our sand back out into the ponding area. Again, and it's raked by the group that's there. But we do that at our own cost. Our owners at this point, which are over 1,700 owners at our building, really don't have any interest in certainly doing construction, especially with vegetation that impedes their path or obstructs their view from the Gulf. So I know that's shared by a number of our owners and our neighbors. So that's all I really wanted to put in. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And again, I would suggest you put that in writing. I suggest you put it in writing either to Chad or I guess to you, Chad, right? Because we want to know if you don't want the project. We want to know that, because if we have 10 properties in a row that don't want it, then we'll immediately create that gap and not continue to force something into an area that you guys don't want. So appreciate all of the comments today, and Chad and I have been taking notes. I've been typing on my phone when I have get a question answered and stuff. It's being recorded. But I encourage you to, for those of you who said you reach out to Chad, please do that. Please follow up so that I don't come to the next meeting a couple months from now and you say, well, at that meeting, you promised you were going to do this. Our promise is we will do our very best to address all the comments and questions, but please follow up in writing, email Chad, gives us a whole litany of things to work on, and then we'll be working on it this summer for you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, both of you.
So let's go back to everyone on virtual. Thank you for being patient. Do we have any questions still on the Zoom? Anybody else hanging in there?
Karen Baumgartner, Board President of 740 Estero. A few questions. If this project begins, how long does the entire project take?
It's about a 6-month construction window if we were to do the entire project as proposed.
And right now, your estimated starting time is when?
Earliest will be late summer of 2023. More realistically, it'll be after November 1st, 2023.
So I'm just concerned about that. You're going into high rental season. That doesn't seem like the best time to me to start a project, but that's just a side comment on that.
Let me address that because I had that question all the time.
Okay.
We have shorebird nesting season and we have sea turtle nesting season, which presents challenges for us to work during the summer on Estero Island. Well, you have hurricane season, we also have cold fronts during the wintertime. So it really comes down to we can't work on the critical wildlife area section of the beach between basically, let's say, March 15th and September 1st. We are not allowed to be on that beach because all the birds. We cannot relocate shorebird eggs. That's not allowed because unlike turtle eggs, which we can relocate, so we can work during the late part of nesting season for sea turtles, but the shorebird window kind of really affects us. So we need to figure out our timing. That's why I say the earliest would be like, let's say September 1st of 2023. If all the permits are in hand and the funding's lined up, we could start working on the south part of the beach because shorebird nesting season's over. We will have had to relocate any sea turtle eggs. Well, for a good part of the beach, there's no sandy beach, so there won't be any sea turtle eggs. But we have the provision to relocate sea turtle eggs and get started by November 1st. That is over. Sea turtle nesting season and shorebird season's over. So from an environmental standpoint, November, December, January, February, early March are the preferred months because we're avoiding all the environmental constraints. And I recognize it's high rental season, but that's the constraints we're under.
Okay, that clarifies that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
740, could you tell, like right now our beach width is probably, I don't know, 100 and 120 feet. What would our new width be approximately?
So the about 120 feet wide, you would probably get about another 100 feet to 120 feet.
Okay, all right, so it's not huge.
Very similar to what you had were you here for the 2012 project?
Yes, so similar to
We're trying to rebuild that template, very close to that, but we're elevating the beach as well. So while you'll get that width, you also get about another foot of sand on average in elevation.
Okay, and then the agreement, what's your time frame that you'd like to have these back if the association decides to move forward with that?
Did you have a date that you put in the letter, Chad?
October arbitrarily.
Sure. So October this fall, the goal is over the summer to get all of the challenges of the lawsuit and the funding and the critical wildlife area and get all that worked out between the DEP and the state. So when we come back and everyone's back for season, we can maybe have a workshop in November. So we'd love to have a great first round of signatures so we have an idea of where we might have the gaps in the project by October 1 or so.
Okay, so I mean, I'm up north for now. All of my board members are up north. So I was kind of, if we held off until this fall, that maybe we could meet with Chad so he could explain how this all works when we're on site, because, looking at all this when we're not engineers to me is very confusing. So is that a possibility to do something like that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. That is the end of my questions. I appreciate the info.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom that wants to ask any more questions?
Yes, I have just one question.
Go ahead, please state your name for the record.
Yes, this is Charles Connor. I live on the beach. I have a private residence. And my question has to do with the agreement, the temporary beach management and access easement. And it's a relatively simple question. There are two different definitions for the duration of the easement. Item 5 says the duration is for a fixed period of time and automatically terminates on June 1, 2024, without any necessity for further instrument of record. But the second whereas statement says, whereas the grantor, me, has agreed to grant and convey to the grantee a permanent non-exclusive access easement over, upon, and across the property. So is it permanent or is it temporary?
You guys decided temporary.
So yeah, it's temporary. I'll get back with the town attorney to address that.
Thank you. If you could have them take out the second whereas clause, I would be much happier with it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Basically, those of us who did the easement originally on the north end will still have to sign the easement.
Yes, ma'am.
But this one's a temporary easement.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely.
Hi, who was speaking?
This is Vicky Dutcher, Kona Beach Club. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to clarify, it's my understanding the original easements are no longer in effect, and so we're asking everyone to sign the easements again.
Michael Waltman again from the privateer. I'm going to state, I think, the obvious. You have a trust issue here. People don't trust where the dunes are going to be. They don't trust where the vegetations are going to be. They don't trust how high the dunes and vegetation are going to be. They don't trust whether we're going to retain ownership of the land. If you can't clarify those three questions, just from what I think, you're going to have a very difficult time getting people to agree to this.
Thank you.
Vicky Dutcher, Kona Beach Club. I just want to clarify, yes, they did expire, and does that mean that they don't exist?
That's a legal question, but if it expired, then the easement's done, the town can't act on it. And then the easement wasn't between you and the town, it was between you and the county, right?
Right. DNR was who I dealt with when we were in that process, and they were there telling us.
I'm sorry, who?
DNR, the Department of Natural Resources, were the people who came out and talked about the plantings.
Oh, Lee County.
Okay.
Lee County Department of Natural Resources?
Right.
Okay.
And of course, they didn't do what they said they were going to do. That was those. When I say they lied to us, those are the folks I'm talking about. What they put in, nothing like what we had requested. So the easement doesn't exist. So this is a temporary easement. So there's a permanent easement that is not going to exist at all.
Yeah, there's no permanent easement proposed. Does that answer your question?
Proposed. So,
or in existence, or, yeah.
In other words, can I take a big loader and take out and wipe out my dunes?
No, ma'am.
Not legally.
Not without permit.
Okay. Okay, I just wondered. But since the easement doesn't exist, since it's defunct, I was just kind of curious as to how that, so this is, I'm not.
So my understanding of the easement means the town no longer has a right, or the contractor no longer has a right, can access your property for construction. That's the purpose of the easement.
Okay. I thought it was to put in these dunes. They're 75% of my property.
Right, but that was part of the construction, right?
I guess. I don't know. That's
Yes,
what I'm
ma'am.
asking you.
Yeah, I'm not privy to what the original easement said, but the purpose of this current easement is to allow the town, its contractor, us, the consultant, and and the environmental monitors to be able to access private property for the purposes of placing sand, grading sand, tilling the beach, planting plants if they're necessary to meet the criteria, and to do our annual monitoring until the period of the easement is over.
Where does the 75% come from? Is that a scientific design that's going to hold the dunes in place? I mean, why was it not like 50%? That seems to be one of the real complaints, is that there's just all these dunes and walking out to the beach and,
Thought you liked the dunes.
oh no, I don't. Not at all.
You like the critters that live in the dunes. I guess
Yes.
is what you said. I'll clarify that.
Yeah, the snakes eat the rats.
I believe it's in the comprehensive plan, so I don't know the origin of the 75%.
Yeah, it's a Lee County requirement for us to get funding from the TDC.
Oh, well, there you go. It's all about money. Thank you.
Hi,
Thank
Dave.
you. Now I can get the kink out of my neck and turn over here.
Yeah. Dave Nussbaum, President Island Winds. I have a question. The critically eroding status that you're requesting Florida DEP for our section of the beach, and we're at R201. Once that has been established, that lasts for 15 years. Am I correct?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question. I don't know that there's a time limit on that designation. Did Guy have anything in his letter about that? I'll have to ask him.
Okay, so once we have that critically eroding status, we are subject to the Florida Statute 161, which is beach and shoreline preservation. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if that we fall under that classification, there is also a paragraph in that statute that says the municipality can take eminent domain proceedings for those people that are not, in order for them to complete the project. Are you familiar with that?
I am not, no. Because I don't know any municipality has ever done eminent domain on any beach project.
But it's in the statutes.
It could be. I can't tell you for sure. I don't have it memorized. I'm familiar with it, but I don't know it line for line.
Okay, it's in there and I can send it to you if you'd like. So my question is, with that in the statute that says the municipality can literally do an eminent domain proceeding to take the beach in order to complete the project, what guarantees do we have from the town that if this is a 15-year project or a 15-year critically eroding classification, that 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years down the road, somebody says, well, these guys held out, so now we're gonna go back in and put sand on their beach or start dune planting? Because everyone's told us, yes, you can opt out of sand, you can opt out of dune planting. My question is, what happens to us if the town comes back and says, okay, you guys opted out, but we're gonna come in anyway?
That's a legal question. I have written it down. I will ask the officials of the state of Florida. In my 30 years here, I've never known any municipality to do eminent domain to do a beach project. So
Right, so let me just put a disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, but I did look over 161 after you brought it up over the CAFMB meeting. That section that mentions eminent domain, that section speaks towards your property rights, and it's saying that the state is not going to take away your property rights, and if anyone wants to take that away, they have to go through the eminent domain process, just like they would have to do it regardless. So the town can do that if it wanted to. It could try to do that at any time. That is not a green light or a automation that they can do it.
But the statute makes it easier.
Again, I'm not a lawyer. Personally, I wouldn't agree with that, but I'll leave it at that.
secured a legal opinion that says that's not true. That's all I have. So please, if you would get back to us or have the town give us a legal opinion on it, that would go a long way in helping us alleviate a lot of the anxiety that we have today.
I have written it down, and we will do our best. And there was a gentleman that posed a couple of, was it Michael Whitman? About trying to alleviate some of the concerns. So as far as the location of the dunes, if it has the erosion control line established, we've defined that it could be anywhere from the erosion control line landward up until, obviously, your existing vegetation or your seawall armoring, whatever you have there. On the properties where we don't have an erosion control line, we will ask the question of the state as to where we can locate those dune plantings, and so we can get that question answered. And we'll get back to you with those answers. As far as the height of the dune, it comes down to what species are planted, and then how much trimming and maintenance is done. Now, you mentioned they didn't do what they promised. I believe the trimming and maintenance is a private property owner responsibility. So while the plants are planted, I don't believe that the town or the county maintained the maintenance of the plants, right? That was a private property owner. Is that right, Chad? Okay. We gotta get you the mic.
Ms. Vicky, I'll come to you.
We specifically wanted only the yellow flowers, and they're very low plantings. And when we came back, we had sea oats everywhere, and grasses, and all kinds of stuff. So it was totally different. We try to manicure it as much as is legal, because we've been warned that, you're not supposed to be able to, cut, except, the grass is 18 inches. Well, you know what? 18 inches to 3 feet, we want to fix it permanently. I don't want to,
But you said they've grown to 8 feet tall earlier, so.
No, the dune is this high, and then we've got all the growth on top of it. So, it totally changed our entire property. And we don't like it.
So there are 3 different planting regimes in there. 2 have sea oats, and 1 is a low dune profile with no sea oats in there. And I can send you those planting species, regime that are available in the managed beach zone.
Well, when this all gets started, we want to knock out those sides and keep the front, and we're good.
Okay.
Thanks.
I think for the record, Bill Perry, I think what we'll need to do is Chad's going to have to do some walking on the beach, especially in that area with those folks, and help them reconfigure their dunes, because there were definitely mistakes made, and they can be addressed. My questions are about long-term maintenance of the beach. Some areas of the program will go through, some areas it won't. But I don't want to be told 10 years from now that, well, we said you could groom up to the vegetation, but that permit expired, and now you can't. How long is this going to be in place? From what I understand, it's 15 years maintenance and an additional 5. And there's going to be a special provision in there, because I know it was that way at the north end of the island, and the DEP signed off on it, that I could groom within 2 feet of the vegetation. Then after that, it would be allowed to migrate, and then at that point, I could groom right up to it. But that permit expired, and I've been told recently that no longer applies, and that I have to maintain 10-foot distance away, which is the state rules. But there was an agreement made between the county and the town and all the upland property owners. So I've been abiding by it and disregarding the 10-foot rule. I'm going with the rule that was put in place and was promised to the property owners. are we gonna adopt that same type of program island-wide? And how do I know that it will continue and not expire? And how long will it be for? The other thing is I wanna make sure of, and this has worked, north of the pier where it was renourished, there was questions from the erosion control line seaward, would you be able to maintain and groom that as if it was all of our beach? Because I groom from the upland property, vegetative line or seawall, to within 10 feet of the rack line. That's town code. We're not allowed to disturb the rack line. There was a question years ago that when the beach was renourished from the erosion control line seaward, that land was state land, and I wouldn't be able to groom that area. There were certain individuals that said I wouldn't be able to, but I've been grooming it ever since. And I was told at the time by the town and the county and the state that I could. So I just want to make sure those questions are answered, because there's people that are listening in Zoom and here that they want to know that they'll be able to maintain the beach between their riparian lines out to the Gulf of Mexico, even though the outer erosion control line seaward area is now state lands. And for how long will I be able to maintain the integrity of the dune systems? That's another question. I understand in the area between 200 and 204, with the ponding area, there is going to be a maintenance provision in there so that we would be able to grade, if the fill's put in, we'd be able to grade if there a low spot was created. How long will that last? Those are my questions. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Bill. And so in our application, we've requested a 15-year permit. That's the maximum duration. But it also has provision that says 15 years, which includes the initial project plus 2 renourishments. And what that means is if our renourishment interval is 10 years, then theoretically we can go 20 years. But when the 15 years is coming up, you have to apply for that extension, and it can be granted through DEP rules. So in theory, it could go longer. It could go up to 20 years. So let's just say it's a 15-year permit. We've asked for the maintenance grading activities to be for the entire project, not just for the ponding area, which would include private property and state-owned property. It doesn't change the rack line. You're not going to be able to go past the rack line unless it's truly a regrading project where we have a problem with ponding and we go take sand. That's a different story. But if you're doing your maintenance, raking and things, you will abide by the rack line provision, is my understanding. But the erosion control line is not going to stop you because we're asking for that ability to do it, whether it's private property or state-owned land, basically out to the mean high water line, whether it's the active mean high water line. But the easements aren't for 15 years or 20 years. So the town won't be able to go onto private property after the expiration of the easement. So if someone needs work done by the town, and we have a limit, and that's what has been discussed at council, was we had proposed permanent, we had proposed enrollment to life of the permit, and a shorter duration. They felt that if we went with a shorter duration, more people would be willing to sign easements, because when you start talking 15 years or permanent, a lot of people start to raise consternation, and so we probably would have to get the easements renewed to do something of a significant type of regrading where the town would have to come in and hire a contractor. So I don't know if I answered every one of your questions, Bill, but I certainly tried. You threw a lot at me, so.
Yeah, I apologize. I should have stayed up here. Again, for the record, Bill Perry. Yeah, for the regrading, I understand that you would, that would really be something with permission. The DEP's already will sign off on it, so it's already in the permit. So then it would be something where the property owner, the properties would approach the town, say, we're having a ponding issue. He'd go down there and check it out. And then the property owners, would they then decide to take on the responsibility, or would that, they hire somebody to do it, or would it be then the town's responsibility? Because then there would be no easement required.
Yeah, I don't know if we have not talked about or discussed about in out years, so give us a chance to talk about it and see how that really works. But I guess the town could issue you as a private contractor to a private property owner the authorization to go rake and regrade because they hold the permit and ultimately have the liability for it. So let us talk about that.
Yeah, the other thing too is I want to differentiate. You can't grade with a rake. You can try.
Correct, right.
Box blade.
Right.
It's that we're not, I haven't been able to use a box blade on the beach since about 96.
You're talking about regrading, not just simply.
Yeah, grading with a blade.
Right.
Yeah,
So post expiration of the easement, can regrading be done and how will it be accomplished?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, thank you. And its short-term easement is the best thing, because one of the biggest problems that the county had was their original easements were perpetual, never-ending, and that's where it created so much problems the first time.
Yep, and that's the time period for this easement and why it's temporary is for the life of the permit, which is approximately 20 years, and that's the where we got that date from in the easement document.
So Chad, you're saying that the easement duration is for the life of the permit?
Yes, sir.
That's how it should read. So that addresses so that there is no post. I thought the one gentleman read to me that it was 2024 it was expiring, the one he read.
Right, so 2024.
He read two dates, and I thought he said something 2024.
Yes, to clarify, this is Charles Connor once again. If you look at what was sent out to everybody just before this meeting, item 5 says the duration of this easement shall be for a fixed period of time and shall automatically terminate on June 1, 2024.
Yeah, that's a typo. I apologize for that. We'll get it straight.
Okay, so this easement is actually for a much longer period?
Yeah, I think 42 would be 20 years.
Then I won't comment on whether I'll sign it or not. Thank you.
To Barbara. You know Barbara?
Yeah, Castikian? Yeah, Castikian?
Yes.
Go ahead. Hello? All right, well, here, back to the microphone.
Michael, I had another question. It was my understanding that originally, when the nourishment talk first started, that it was going to start next year, the summer of next year, or fall of next year, somewhere in there, and that it was the way it was set up. It was going to start at Fort Myers Beach first in the north end, and then work its way down, and then go across Big Carlos, and then they were going to do the Lover's Key renourishment. And so it's, from what I understand, that has been changed, and they're going to they're going to start Lover's Key next summer or late summer, and do it first, and then do the Fort Myers Beach after they finish the Lover's Key. What can you explain to everyone the reasoning behind how that got changed?
Yeah, I don't know the origin of that because the Lee County is proceeding with Lover's Key and Bonita Beach together, and they're using a sand source that's on the outer continental shelf, which is a whole different construction operation, a whole different contract, a whole different contractor. So that project will be bid separately by the county. It completely will not go into construction with Estero Island at all. There'll be two separate projects, two separate bids, two separate contractors at this time.
Okay, then the information that I had gotten wasn't correct then.
Yeah. There was some discussion in the last 30 days or so between the town and the county about should the town try to piggyback on the county's contract and work that and use the Outer Continental Shelf resource as well. But they're too far along in their design and processes. You would delay both projects if we were to make that change. But other than that, they have not been linked. And so I don't know where that came from if you thought that was the plan months ago, but yeah.
Answer my question.
And really, it's because it's the shallow water of the inlet. You can't, the same dredger that's going to dredge for Lover's Key can't bring their equipment into the inlet ebb shoal to work. And conversely, the equipment that can get in here and work can't go work offshore.
Okay, so it's two completely different
Correct.
projects. One has
Correct.
nothing to do with the other. Okay,
Correct.
and that clears that up. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else on Zoom have any questions for us? Anyone else in the room have questions for us? Going once? Going twice? Well, again, I want to thank everybody. This has been very valuable for me. I know for Chad as well. He's been talking to all of you a lot more than I have. I look forward to getting to know many of you and come out to the beach and look at your particular situations. We will try to answer all these questions that we can to the best of our ability. And I would encourage you to call Chad or email Chad as follow-ups so we make sure we understand your questions correctly. I've taken notes on the key items that I know for my homework, but it doesn't hurt to have you put it in writing, and that way we know and understand your questions exactly, and then we can get back to you. My hope is we do this again real soon. Many people will be heading up to parts here, there, and whoever geographically, but we have Zoom, so right now our plan is not to meet over the summer, because every time we do that we get criticized because it's not when everybody's here. But the amazing virtual world allows us to meet more often. But certainly in the fall, we'll do another major one like this. And then I would envision another one in spring of 2023 and do yet another one so that we can continue to get your feedback and try to work on these questions and answers together, try to get consensus. And again, for those of you who don't intend to sign easements, please let us know, because it doesn't hurt. It does not hurt our feelings. It only helps us plan better and then not intrude into your private space. And so, because there's one project we had where they literally showed up at the nth hour and said, "What are you doing? I can't believe you're doing this, and we don't want it." And we had to then scramble to fix everything, and it just costs the town and the taxpayers and everybody else more money and further complicates things and really upsets your neighbors. But if we know today or tomorrow going in that we know that this group is just not interested, we'll answer your questions, and after that, if she's not interested, then we can plan better. And we want to be open and honest with everybody about it. So thank you all. Have a great summer. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. Hey, hey.